Hello, Carla. Nice to have you on.
Sorry for keeping you waiting.
Oh, you didn't keep me waiting at all. I think it was just a little glitch in our system. Carla, I need to tell you that, in radio, it's a very fancy, it's very fancy technology where there's a 7-second delay that allows the radio station to protect itself from violating FCC rules of bad language, and we're having a problem with that. So you need to keep it clean today.
Oh,
lady,
shoot.
keep it clean. We're driving without a seatbelt. We're swinging without a rope.
It happens to be on my day, huh?
It's on your day, so keep it clean.
If I just am silent for a second, will people think I'm being bleeped out?
They will think you're being bleeped out. But we do have a bit of Carla, we do have a bit of a bad connection with you.
Oh.
Are you in a funny place? It's crackly every time you say something. Can you?
I'm in my usual spot. You want me to call back?
Yeah, can you just hang up and call right back, and we'll see if we can get a little bit of a better connection, because we have some funny business going on in the sky. Now, part of what I think Carla might want to address with us today is that the Minnesota State Legislature, there's 100 people or so that's helped make some laws for the whole state around here. They just voted last night that they want to add a vote from the entire voting population to decide if we should determine in Minnesota that marriage is between just one man and one woman. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be voting on that in 2012. It's one of these states now that's going to try to have an amendment about such things. Carla, I was just updating people in the listening audience about the Minnesota State Legislature having voted to add an amendment to the Constitution and asking the people to vote on that. And I thought that perhaps you were going to raise that topic with us in our conversation about what's going on in motherhood. Carla.
It's all crackly.
We still have a lousy connection. I don't know why. Okay, well, have your way with us in your crackly, in your own crackly atmosphere.
Okay, I'll do my best. Well, yeah, I do want to talk about this a little bit because this whole
Carla,
thing.
Can you call back from another phone? Could you try that? Because maybe it's on your end.
Intolerable.
Maybe it is intolerable. It's just crackle fest. And I'll make some comments about this, and then I'll let you have at it after you get the call back here.
Okay.
The Minnesota State Legislature has decided that people should decide if it's one man or one woman. Now, I think the language should actually be one male to one female. Because how do you know if a person has risen to the level of being a man or if she's now a woman, right? Right. Because what they're actually saying is this is a gender question, right? But they don't want to put it in terms of a gender question.
No.
Instead, they want to put it in terms of a man and a woman because that's what we've all known for all of this time. So there's now this kind of semantic game that's being played, in my view, and I think that it's precarious. I think it's not helpful. I actually think that people in the state of Minnesota are going to say, you know what? We don't think that should be part of our constitution of our state, that we make a determination about that. I think, in other words, it's going to be voted down. So I have no problem with it being voted on because I think the people in the state of Minnesota are going to say, you know what? That's not how we think about these topics right now. We're thinking about them totally differently. But it certainly has to do with what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a family, and that's where our guest, Carla Barnhill, the curator of the Mommy Revolution, our little snap, crackle, and pop.
Yeah, let's see if we're better now. I hear we're better.
Hey, that sounds fantastic.
Excellent.
Yes. You have 9 minutes to just tell us in uninterrupted, in a crackle-free zone.
Unbeeped, uncensored, uncrackly. That's how I roll. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that this plays into what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. Because one of the things I thought this morning in all my irritated cynicism about the whole thing was, what are they going to do? Make you you have to take some sort of genetic chromosomal test now too?
Right.
Like if we're going to say we're defining it as one man and one woman, well, now are we going to have to define what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman?
See,
if a very feminine man and a very masculine woman decide they want to marry each other? Is that okay?
I mean, I guess, not to get overly snarky about this, but I guess it really, at some point, a person is declared, I guess, on their birth certificate as to what their gender is. Is that right? Is that where it happens?
Yeah, I don't know. And then do you bring that along with you?
And I guess then somewhere you have to prove that you are that gender for your identification. Because when you get married in the state of Minnesota, do you have to bring a birth certificate to prove who you are? What?
I don't think so.
I don't know what you need.
That.
But I think you might need just a driver's license to prove who you are.
Which does have male or female on it.
Yeah, but you tell them that. You don't have to bring a birth certificate to get a driver's license, do you?
I don't know. So this is what gets funny, and this is where you start getting into you're not just having a conversation about what genders. You're really into a political, and I don't mean this in the political party sense, but you're getting into a conversation amongst all of us politically, meaning the politic, the group, the entire group.
The body politic.
The body politic. That now you're getting into having to define words with a precision that we may not be happy with in the end.
Well, and this has been one of my beefs along the way as well, is if we're going to talk about protecting marriage, if that's the guise under which we're talking about this, why is gender the most important part of that? Like, why shouldn't we say, if you have a history of domestic abuse, you can't get married? If you have more than 3 divorces, you can't get married. Like, if this really is about protecting marriage, then why is gender the thing we had to pick out?
Yeah,
that, to me, is one of the least problematic parts of a marriage.
Well,
is the gender question. So anyway, to me, all of that points to there being something other than the protection of marriage afoot here.
Because you're saying if you're really into protecting marriage,
we
would do
other things. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We wouldn't just let people get married and maybe suggest that they could save $35 on their marriage license if they have a little bit of counseling by someone,
right?
Which is what the state of Minnesota does.
Right. Or say you need to have been dating for a year.
Right, like if you're going to get your driver's license here, you have to take classes, you have to take behind the wheel if you're under 18 years old, and then you have to pass a test before we give you a driver's license. But a marriage license, any 2 people can just walk in,
if you
fill
want
out
to
the
go
form.
catch a fish,
you have to pay.
You have to pay and get a license.
Yeah.
To go down and catch a fish.
Uh-huh.
And no one asks you what you're going to do with that fish. No one asks you what your intentions are about the fish.
So you think something else is afoot in this conversation?
Yeah. To me, there are a number of things afoot in this conversation, and I'm like I said, in my cynicism this morning, a few that have risen up for me is that one, it's sort of a little bit of a shell game, a way to distract us from what are clearly bigger problems in the state of Minnesota right now. I mean, are they going to settle a budget today?
Well, that's the other.
They spent 6 hours discussing this last night.
That's the competing problem, isn't it?
It was the most pressing problem we have in this state right now. So it's a way to fool voters into thinking we're really up to something. We really are working hard on stuff, and then in the middle of the night, stripping away, the health care provisions that provide for poor children and taking away funding for PCAs for people who have children that they've adopted out of foster care.
Yeah, PCA is a personal care attendant. Yeah, they're saying that in this budget that they would pass.
Yeah. So at 3 in the morning when no one was paying attention, they decided that was a good idea. So this is a way of distracting us. And I think it's a way, too, it's going to distract for the next 18 months to keep us from really pressing them on some of these other questions.
So you're
thinking, and I think it's a way to get, and I think this is going to backfire on them. I hope it does, but I think it's a way of drawing people to the polls in 2 years, or in a year and a half, saying there's this really important thing. So if you weren't going to vote, you really should vote now. You really need to get in there and vote.
And I think you're right. I think that the general feeling in the state of Minnesota on this topic is, we're doing fine. We don't need to change the language and change the rules. Yeah. Like, I'm still confused as to, because when you decide to pass a law, and I think a lot of government, I think it's an important part of our civic life and how a bunch of people, millions, are going to live together, it's good to debate some things and have some laws. Normally you pass laws because there's something that you want to accomplish or have more people participate in, or there's something that you want to have less people participate in. So there's some reason that you now pass a law as opposed to saying to people like, hey, just figure it out on your own. So I was in Michigan last week, and they're now going to add to their laws in Michigan that if you find a dead body, you have to report it to someone. Because apparently in Michigan, it turned up that somebody had somebody's roommate died and he didn't report it. So the officials came and said, well, we're going to prosecute you for not reporting. And they realized, there is no law that says you have to report, right? So then you're like, hey, we probably should have a law about it, because it's probably a good idea that you don't just let a body lay around. Like, we should encourage people to do that. I'm not sure where the dead body is here.
No. Well, and that's one of the things, too, that I think is really interesting, is even listening to the people supporting this bill talk about it in the last few weeks. There's this sense that we're trying to protect this decision from being made by legislatures and judges. That's what they keep saying.
Yes.
And I'm thinking to myself, you mean the people that we elect to make those decisions for us?
Yes.
So what they're saying is they're basically just they're trying to just pass the buck back to the voters. And I'm saying the voters elected you because they thought you were going to. They knew how you would vote if that law came around, and that's how they spoke.
Right.
Now you're going to come back and say, well, you didn't speak loud enough. But then the other thing is that it suggests that there's this severe lack of trust that 10 years from now, voters will be capable of making a good decision about this. It takes all the law is meant to be supple, and it's meant to be fluid and to be changeable. And this takes that away on a very it's interesting that of all the issues they could have chosen, this is the one.
Right. So not to overly geek out on how politics work and how laws work, but you have a constitution that in our form of government is supposed to stay static or unchangeable without a lot of work because it's sort of foundational, and that, like the foundation of your house. But then the laws that are built on that foundation, they can be remodeled and rebuilt, and it's only under extreme circumstances. So why would this slide into that category? And I think you're right, because we'll make a decision now. Like, I don't care where someone is on this topic. I think it's a bad idea, personally, this is Doug's view, that it's a bad idea to make laws using ballot initiatives. We either are going to say everyone votes on laws, or we use a representative form of democracy, and that is that you elect people who vote. You choose one or the other, but you don't decide on the topic which form of government are we going to have, or we're going to end up in a mess like you have in some other states like California where they do this. It's a bad idea for politics. It's a bad idea for this topic. No one's going to win, and I really wish that hadn't happened. And you and I, have similar thoughts on this. So we thought, well, this would be a good idea where we could rant about this with no one interfering. Here's what I'd like to do, and I'm going to sort of make this promise to listeners right now. I know a number of religious leaders in this state, evangelical Christian leaders, who are absolutely on the other side of this topic and think that it's important. And I'm going to have them on the show and tell us why that's important, so we can at least hear their view. Love that. Because it's not good to hold a strong opinion when you don't have a friend that holds the counterbalance opinion on these topics that are that are obviously divisive.
Can I give you a question to ask them? Can I give you a question to feed them?
In 10 seconds.
Okay, because the thing I want to know is how would they feel if the Democrats were trying to run something through that they had a moral opposition to?
Oh, interesting. I will do that.
Right.
That's Carla Barnhill. You can pick her up over at themommyrevolution.com. Hey, I'll see you at the wedding later, Carla.
Awesome.
All right. Hey, and we'll be back here with the Cripes and the Come On, and You Got to Be Kidding Me. Doug Pagitt Radio, religious radio that's not quite right, but every once in a while we're just spot on.